in very few minutes, because you don't want to look 10 minutes long to at a video. No, in 30 seconds to 90 seconds to like a minute, 2 minutes max, tell me what's happening. Trigger them. And if you trigger them, they are going to do their own research further. The challenge is, how do you trigger them? So there are so many ways to do that. You just need to know who are you aiming at and what triggers those people. So it needs a little bit of research, but we don't have another choice. We have to go with everything that's changing around us, because with the changing time, the changing um how do you call it, technology and everything, the problem, we cannot let the problem get out of our sight, and that's climate change, because that is changing rapidly too. And I always say, we are trying to save the planet, but I'm so afraid that we are on that edge of extinction as human beings.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Caribbean Climate Calabash podcast. I'm your host, Gladstone Taylor. Bear with us for a second. Today, I'm joined by our program director, Johannes, Damodar, Patak. He'll be sharing more with us about his journey into journalism, but also things that prospective but also current fellows can use to get themselves through the fellowship, to get themselves accepted into fellowships, best practices, things that people can kind of do to keep on the narrow path for these fellowships. So thank you for joining us today, Johannes. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Gladstone. I'm doing pretty fine. Kind of, it's the holidays coming up, so you can feel all these activities and all this energy coming from everywhere. Good energy, of course. So yeah, I'm feeling good. Very good.
That's good. That's good. Holiday cheer going around.
Yeah,
So
as you can see, the Christmas tree in the back.
yeah, exactly. All right. So a lot of the viewers today will be fellows, people looking for opportunities, people already who are a part of our fellowships. They might be wanting to kind of know more and a little more about you. That's a good place to start. So tell us a bit about your journey. You are also a journalist, and that's something that might be comforting to other journalists and their struggles. So tell us a bit about your journey, how you began,
Yeah, sure.
and how. Yeah.
So it's a very funny journey, if I have to tell. It was like in 2016. I was kind of jobless, and I was like, what am I going to do? Bills need to be paid and everything. I was like, what's next? So I saw this advertisement in like a newspaper. And back then, reading a newspaper was not so it was almost like people were still reading the newspaper a little bit, and I was one of them. So I saw the advertisements that they were looking for a student journalist. And the oldest newspaper we have in Suriname was called The West. And that's how I applied. But believe me, I never ever thought that I would love being a journalist. Because I never was a person who loved reading and writing. But I started off in April 2016, and from there on, it's just like, today we're in 2024. I'm like, my life is nothing without writing. Even if I'm not doing, for example, even if I don't do like a journalism piece, there is at least one time in a day where I take like my phone and type something. The writing, it's just like the seed was planted like 8 years ago, and it's still growing and growing. So yeah, from there I started. I worked at various news. I worked as at the newspaper there, and then from there I started to like freelance. and started doing much more like more in the media sector, doing trainings for journalists in Suriname, but also like in the region. Then I discovered Climate Tracker, and then I started as the program officer like 2 years ago at Climate Tracker. And from there, yeah, I have like a strong legal background. So I did my bachelor's in law, and I did like um yeah internal like journalism training from like very experienced journalists back home here. So yeah, and from there, like I did like some great things as a journalist. I say we are the fourth pillar of a democracy, in every country, in every setting. You know, the journalists are like the eyes and the ears of the people. So from that aspect, I did like I'm proud that I could do like many good things for different communities.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. It's I think most of us kind of have like an unusual entry into the space. I think as journalists, I don't think there's any like regular way to get into the space. Most people I've talked to, they have like, a story where, yeah, even if they had like dreams of being a journalist, or even if they had the
Yeah,
ambition.
I never did. Believe me, I never ever thought I would become a journalist. I was like, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, and then suddenly I became a journalist. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is one of those professions that when you once you kind of find your skill in it, or once you kind of wet your feet, even though it is a difficult profession, it is something that you will kind of fall in love with. The curiosity, the access to information and sharing that information with people.
yeah,
Um,
that's true. And you know what? The best thing is of being a journalist. It's like you're everything under one profession. You're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a pilot, you're an engineer, you're almost everything because as a journalist, people like underestimate the job of a journalist. You need to be able to do economics, do maths. You need to be able to make analytics. You need to be able to make conclusions. You need to be able to do research. So it's like a journalist is like a little bit of everything in one.
mhm. Agreed. And you end up doing like preliminary studies, almost like preliminary academics on most of the things that you report, because you have to do so much research. It's just like you have a bit of pre-knowledge on almost everything that you've reported on, in a way too. And the more you report, you become like a Rolodex of this information as well. So it's a very interesting
Exactly.
it's a very interesting profession. But yeah, tell me how that kind of led into Climate Tracker. And
So yeah, climate tracker. It like 2 years ago, I saw like this advertisement that climate tracker is seeking for a program officer. I'm like, interesting. So I looked at like the requirements. I'm like, okay, I'm a perfect fit for it. And the funny thing was, I was not the first uh, choice of climate tracker. But because the person before me like dropped off, I was like the second choice. But yeah, it was meant to be that way.
meant to
And
be.
from that, yeah, that's meant to be. And then from that day on, I'm still the program officer and the journalism mentor at Climate Tracker. And during this journey, yeah, I'm not sure if I should go like right away on that part, but um, I made great connections, whole family and whole new family. So yeah,
No, I
but
mean it.
Climate Tracker was it was the it was my moment to go like international, to be honest. Yeah, gave me international exposure. It's like it was my when they have breaking news, that
Yeah,
was a breaking news of my career, like
yeah,
getting my job at Climate Tracker and starting off like as a program officer, because it opened so many doors, so many
mm,
networks at the
yeah,
same time. And I think, well, when I talk about Climate Tracker nowadays, I also tell the fellows, that I mentor, and all the fellows that like um sign up for our programs. It's this is your moment. Having that international exposure, making yourself seen to the world. Make a difference, but also like As a journalist, it's your moment to shine, because if you can make that impact out there, believe me, doors will open and open and open.
100%. And journalism is kind of like one of those professions where you don't you're doing what you think you're supposed to be doing. You don't really have like it's not as easy as like okay other jobs where you might know okay I'm gonna get this role and then move up to here and then move up to here. There's a lot of uncertainty in it as well, but the thing about the climate tracker and the programs here is that that connection we talk about this often when people come on is that network that it's building. In a lot of ways, it's also showing the development of news around climate change in the region. And it's like we have different um, islands that have reached different places of development in their reportage on climate change and that kind of thing. But when we combine everything that we have going on, it creates stronger stories as well. Um, and oftentimes we're going through some of the very same things. So, kind of sharing that intel is very essential. And like you mentioned, internationally to it, it breaks us out of just being, a Surinamese journalist or in my instance, a Jamaican journalist. It breaks us into the regional space, the Caribbean space, which international is great, and I've worked for most of the publications I've worked for personally have been like international. But the thing about the region is there is an importance to the narrative around climate change here. And once you kind of break into that space, in some ways, even though it's a smaller region, it's a bigger deal, than maybe moving to Europe and starting to report there. You know what I'm saying? Which often
Yeah,
happens. Like a lot of our journalists in our region, because of how difficult the job is, they migrate to other countries, and that's why we struggle in terms of development. But yeah, so it's
that's a
great
lot of
having this network is really great, and yeah, we want to encourage even prospective fellows, and in that same vein, it'd be interesting for you to share maybe things that you've seen, things that you've maybe mistakes, and also good things that best practices that you've seen as program manager, um, that you think could be helpful for other fellows to kind of take note of.
Yeah, sure. So, one of the apart from like creating your own stories that are related to climate change, as if it's energy transition, climate justice, or just bring awareness about the topic climate change, I always tell fellows, keep it simple, because what happens now, it's like the big news is already out there. So all the small good news, positive news and I'm stressing out positive news because everything is so negative these days.
Mm-hmm.
We need some positiveness. So focus on like the stories that are never heard. Focus on like communities, that are never heard, are never being highlighted. Because while we are fighting, yes, the fight is good. We are fighting for funds from the global north to finance everything that's happening around climate change. We need to adapt. We also need to see, but that we also need to see that there are also communities, also organizations, also maybe governments in the region here that are already doing stuff, already doing projects to like adapt to climate change. And those stories need to be highlighted too, because those stories can create an example for other communities in other countries. I know, for example, I'm doing a story right now. I'm not going to tell a lot about the story, but it's like a village in in uh in Guyana, who is like 100% primitive, and they are like using the traditional way of living as a source of income, like by 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 combining ecotourism in it. So those
Mm-hmm.
are like examples of when communities like come together and decide, we're not waiting on money. Let's start what you already can do. And I think that's very important, and that's where the role of journalists come in, because they need the exposure. People need to know what's happening. We can learn from each other. So that is one of the things. Always keep it simple. Don't try to use big words, long sentences, like complicated sentences, but the message is not going out there. Simplify it for people. We need to get, there is like a certain bubble when we talk about climate change. There is like a bubble with the same persons every single year that come together and like talk about climate change. But we need that bubble is good. We need these people to make policies, keep that there. But as a journalist, we have the responsibility to connect to all of those who are outside of that bubble. And with outside of that bubble, I mean my grandfather or grandmother from 75 years needs to understand what climate change is all about.
Mm-hmm.
My
Yeah.
sister of 9 years needs to understand what we're talking, what climate change is all about. So those are very like simple stuff that we do not like we don't like consider it enough, right? So we just think, yeah, everybody knows about it and just let's publish it that way. But no, simplify it. Use like innovative ways. TikTok, social media. There are so many ways. People don't like to read these days. So how are we going to connect with those people? Video, for example. If we have to use anime, let's do that. If we have to use TikTok, use influencers, let's do that. Let's collaborate. And I think even at Climate Tracker, we succeeded in, we were doing like formats that we had to do written stories or like TV stories. But now, for example, we have like incorporated in our fellowships that one of the content that they have to produce is like a video for TikTok, for example, where they're like breaking into little pieces a certain story that they already produced in very few minutes, because you don't want to look 10 minutes long to at a video. No, in 30 seconds to 90 seconds to like a minute, 2 minutes max, tell me what's happening. Trigger
Mm-hmm.
them. And if you trigger them, they are going to do their own research further. The the the, the, the challenge is, how do you trigger them? So there are so many ways to do that. You just need to know who are you aiming at and what triggers those people. So it needs a little bit of research, but we don't have another choice. We have to go with everything that's changing around us, because with the changing time, the changing um how do you call it, technology and
Mm-hmm.
everything, the problem, we cannot we cannot let the problem get out of our sight, and that's climate change, because that is changing rapidly too. And I always say, we are trying to save the planet, but I'm so afraid that we are on that edge of extinction as human beings. And there will be a point where not me or you, but our coming generations, people will have to decide who's going to live, who's going to die. People are going to be in surviving mode. And yeah, that's going to be awful. That's going to be really awful. So we have, like, as journalists, we have like an important role to fulfill right now. And
Mm-hmm.
that is like making sure that the communication with every single person in the world is being kept alive. It's being, the information needs to get to the people, what's happening around it, simplify it. As
Break
journalists, we
it
don't
down.
only have like the responsibility to report on it, but also comment, also like highlight the solutions. What are you doing as a journalist too? So yeah, I can go on and on.
Yeah, no, I think people want to. I mean, I think the fellows will want to know more, but yeah, it's interesting to get that perspective as well, from someone who is also vetting the stories, looking at the stories, and kind of seeing what would work best. So yeah, I agree. I think part of our job is not just to report, but also to break down some of this stuff, in whatever way. The kind of stories we tell, as you said, is a huge part of it. So, like, getting down to the regular people and what they're doing, the communities and what they might be doing, but also the language. Let's look at the language and see how we can break that down and make
Yep.
it simpler. Talk simply about some of these big terms, some of these big
Exactly.
jargon words. That's very essential because yeah, and I think that's like people worry about transmitting it into the modern age digital world and stuff, and I think that might be
Yep.
easier. That might be easier. So like
And you
let
know
it
where you get,
let it
when you're done, sorry.
no, I was saying that might be a little bit easier figuring out the softwares and stuff like that might be the easy part.
Exactly.
I think the hard part might be figuring out the language or breaking it down, making it simpler so people can understand. Because you can spend 15 minutes figuring out how to turn on your camera and do the whole thing. It's not that easy for sure. Because I've been learning. There's some stuff that I've been learning, and it's been taking me months.
But
But this
but
stuff,
that's where collaboration comes into, because
yeah,
as you said, maybe it's as journalists we need to innovate ourselves too. We need to go with time. But sometimes I do understand like the technology can be hard.
mm,
So why not collaborate? I mean, if Gladstone is a great video editor,
mm,
for example, let's collaborate. I'm producing the content. Okay, let's make something good out of it. So we
agree.
should not be afraid to collaborate with each other as journalists, and not only journalists but also like photographers, like video editors. It's like a whole team. It is a team that works together. So we should not um exclude these the photographers and the video editors, because let's be honest, a picture can tell a lot more than when I write a whole story. A picture on itself can tell a whole story on itself too. Just
Mm,
one picture, looking at it from different angles. So it's like a teamwork that we have, like in the whole journalism field as a whole, like one common goal that we have to
yeah,
fulfill. And the best ways to get the simplest stories is, whether we are so tied to our vehicle or our scooter or stuff, but just take public transportation, sit, like take a long route, just
mm.
sit and just listen to what people are talking about.
No
And
facts.
that's where you get your best inspiration to work on your stories. And that's when you're going to, wow, it's hot today. People are going to say, one thing that I hear very often in buses, the sun is very hot. I don't know what's happening to the climate. Another thing that we're always hearing in Suriname, yeah, but shouldn't it be like the season of rain now? But it's so dry. So
Mm,
people are like noticing what's happening, but from the officials, from institutions, there is no um information coming that is like telling them what's really happening. So everyone is like, they're just like suggesting everything that they're suggesting that, but that's where we come in as journalists. We need to like provide them with that information. This is what's happening to the weather. This
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
what's happening to like the seasons have changed. Because remember, what our biggest challenges is fake news. If we have like presidents, like previous presidents from big countries saying, climate change is a hoax,
Mm,
and you have like these poor people. With poor, I mean, the simple people that who don't understand climate change. Here, like one famous president saying, it's a hoax, and then you have like your president from the Caribbean, and they're saying like, no, climate change is not a hoax. So who are they going to believe? It's like the mindset needs to be changed too. We are too much focused on north, the global north, which is not good. We should have belief in our own stuff, our own Caribbean technology, our own Caribbean database, and our Caribbean data, our own Caribbean experts too. We
mm.
are too much focused on, sometimes I have to say, like at white people for some reason.
Yeah, and I think those are some of the challenges that we have as journalists too, like having the right focus. Um, and even as you mentioned, like collaborating, and this is something that I find too. That I'm hoping the fellows will take heed to this one. This is one of the guide episodes that I'll be sharing as well. But yeah, one of the struggles that we do have sometimes with fellows is their lack of skill when it comes to some of these new media and stuff like that. And I think what I would say is like just very similar to how we talked about language and simplifying. It's it's important not to overthink that part of it, because a lot of us, when we're out and something crazy is happening, or something that we think is viral, or something that we think other people might enjoy, the first thing we'll do is pull out our phone and record a video, and then we'll edit the video and post it on social media. So it's important to understand that it's not anything to overthink a lot of this digital stuff. We're using our phones anyway to do this stuff. So
Yeah.
it's not something we have to overthink. Just pull out the phone and record. It's literally that simple. And a lot of the time, some of this video editing software too is directly there on our phone. It's just the same way you would trim the video to put on social media. It's a very similar process with some of this stuff, and it's not that hard, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
but we do want the journalists to come out of the fellowships with some of these basic skills, like knowing that in the very same way you can pick up your phone to film someone in a fight to try to put up on World Star or YouTube, you could pick up your phone and film a video report, or a 2 minute, or a 3 minute thing, and it ends up doing well. It's not, sometimes it's really the low cost or low produced stuff that ends up going viral. If you check a lot of the viral content online, it's not something that a man take with like my video DSLR camera and edited 50 million times on Adobe Premiere or whatever. We have a lot of software now and a lot of stuff that makes this stuff a lot more accessible, and also
But
takes some out of the work too. Like AI is one of the things that I think
good
that's
point.
I think that's an interesting subject for us as journalists, because I'm not encouraging anyone to go and get AI to write your stories, but there are other ways that you can use AI to minimize some of the work that you have to do. For me as a video creator as well, I've been using AI to transcribe my videos, not just to transcribe them, but to figure out the main points in the subjects that the discussions that were taking place in the video, and being able to communicate that best to the tech online, like the search engine, Google stuff, like figuring out the best keywords. Using AI for that
Yeah.
stuff is like it lifts some of the burden from your shoulders, so you can just figure out,
Exactly.
all right, what am
Yeah.
I gonna do? I don't have to figure out a title. I don't have to figure out a description, all this stuff. I just have to get the AI to help me and do the most essential part. And this is what I was saying. It comes back to this, which is figuring out how to break these stories down, figuring out the language to simplify
Exactly.
the stuff. Once you focus on that, focus on the storytelling aspect of it. Even if you do something really simple, like just a simple voiceover, like it could still be really effective, as long as people
Yep.
understand what you're saying. So, that's a big
I'm
part of that struggle that I think a lot of fellows might be having.
I'm happy that you brought up AI because there is, for some reason, when it comes to journalism and AI, there are like two groups. There is a pro and there are like pros, and there are like people who are against it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I also use AI. One thing, use AI as a guideline.
Hmm.
Don't use AI, use it as a guide. Don't use it as like to be you, because one thing AI will never be able to do is that is your own writing style. AI
Facts.
would never be able to copy that. AI is something that is like programmed. So if I ask the question like the same thing that you're going to ask, I'm going to get the same answer in the same style. I cannot say AI write it in my style. No. So the best thing is, what I use AI for, very simple. I write my own story, because remember, if you don't know how to use AI,
Mm.
in the end it takes you double the time to write your story. You need to be very clever how to use AI. For example, if I have like a story idea, right? I'm like, but I don't know which direction I should go. I would ask AI, what possible directions could I take this story to? AI is going to give you suggestions, and in those suggestions, you're going to create your own. That's what you
Yeah.
should how you should use AI. Another way to use AI is very simple. When you wrote your story, there is always that we have like the editor in chief that is like going through your story to do the corrections, right? The edits. Use AI for that. Don't use AI to write your whole story. No. AI is good
Yeah.
to like culture stories, grammar, look at grammar and stuff. So use it for those
Yeah.
things. But don't use it for yes, I'm going to talk about I need to write a story about climate change from
No.
a climate justice angle. Can you produce a story for me based on,
But here,
for example, Suriname? Yeah, AI is going to create it, but what about the sources? What about the resources? You need to back
exactly.
up your story. AI is not going to do that for you because the links that AI use,
And
if you
then
open them, they don't work.
a big red flag for AI too is you have to understand that there are softwares out there that pick up AI. So if you want to be not smart and go ahead and use the AI to write your story, you best believe the person that you're writing it for, they have these software, and it's common, So if they're going
Exactly.
out of their way, to hire you to report on this thing, it means that they don't want AI. So nine
Yeah,
times out of ten, they have a software that they're going to run it through to make sure that whatever it is that they're hiring you to do as a journalist, that is being done, and that you're not shortcutting it and trying to have AI
exactly.
do it.
Exactly.
So
I
the
always
AI
say just
can't save
always
you. The AI can't save you from another machine. Like they have other machines out there that's not detected
well
AI
said.
stuff.
That exactly. Use AI. Use AI as a guide. Don't use it to do all your work. Use it. Use it
No.
clever. Don't let it oversmart you.
Yeah, and it's just like a machine that you would, for instance, like transcribing. Like that's a great way to use AI. Like you don't have to sit down
Exactly.
anymore and write out. If you've already gone and done the work of interviewing the source or talking to the person, I know you have a long audio or a long video. You can use AI to help you to lift some of the stuff that you already created. That like you went and asked the questions, you went and recorded, you went and done this
Yep.
the source stuff. So now the AI can help to lift the information out of that. And then you
Exactly.
can use that to put that into your video description, into your title, and share more with people. So yeah, the AI is definitely tricky, but it's something that it's important to use as well. If we want to
Yeah.
kind of get a better grasp. And this is something that Gary V is one of those big social media people always say is that yeah, AI there's a lot of there is a lot of work to be done when it comes to digital and going digital with a lot of content. But the AI is there to kind of help that because it's not everything that we have to do. Some of it the machine can do for sure. So yeah, man.
Totally agree.
So outside of AI, what are some other best practices, or outside of encouraging people not to use AI to write their stories, what are some other
Yeah.
don't do's that you would kind of encourage?
Always, one thing, quotes. Quotes make your story come alive.
Hmm.
Quote people. I say always words have feelings.
Yeah,
Whenever I write a story, the way that I check my story is when I'm reading it, I should feel every word that I'm reading.
yeah,
If I'm trying to tell people about a sad story, when people read my story, they should be able to feel that sadness inside of them. And that is one thing that I encourage fellows to do. Read as if like you would like to read a story. Keep it simple. Read as like your grandmother would love to read a story.
mm,
Your little sister should be able to read the story. Keep it simple. And if you yes, we have like a task as journalists to educate people too. So if you use like a word, explain it in your story.
mm,
A word that's so like complicated, for example, climate resilience. Explain what is climate resilience because my grandmother of 73 or 75 does not understand what climate resilience is. She does not know what adaptation is. No, explain to the people what do you mean with that. So codes, very good example. What I'm also like seeing a lot of time is that people are afraid to use resources. Whenever you are making a conclusion in your story, make sure you back it up. Don't tell me
Yes,
ninety
big one, big
percent
one.
90% of the population doesn't know about climate change, but you are not backing up. So, well, how should I verify what you said? Hyperlink. We need to use hyperlink. Use it,
Yeah.
use it, use it. Because hyperlink the report that you use. Because as a reader, I should be able to see from where did you get the information, what's making sure that it's not fake news. Because we are like so surrounded by fake news these days. So make sure you hyperlink all the conclusions that you make in your stories, especially when you use a report to make a conclusion and that report is like 200 pages long.
Mhm.
Hyperlink like exact where you found it in the report. So just don't, and also don't put like the whole report. Just hyperlink. You can highlight it and it just like brings you to the same page where you took the information from. That is very important. Quote um resources, hyperlink your resources, but also make your story. I always say make it unique. There should be something about your story that connects people. It could be either the pictures, it could be either a call for action in the end of your story. Make people, when they are done reading, it should like ring bells always. Just
Mhm.
don't 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 make a story that's not unique. That's one story that I can talk about is like, for example, the story that one of our fellows did on activism in Jamaica. I mean, that story is the very first time that I saw such a story that like pictures are speaking for themselves. Resources, there are no sources in the story. That's a very funny thing. There are no sources in the story, but everything is hyperlinked. You can find all the information, you can back it up, but the story is so positive that in the end, when you're done reading that story, all you want to think is, how can I bring change, how can I make a difference in my community if these people can do it? So I say always, journalism is very dynamic. It's not just one format that sticks again. It's very dynamic. As long as you keep your to the ethics of journalism, that's fine. But you can always play with the uniqueness of bringing stories, of reaching people, and even when it's a written story, just do it. So
Agree.
yeah, those are like some of the tips that I could share. But those are like the main things. But also like, most of the fellows, especially our climate justice fellows, we select people not only based on experience. We are planting seeds of climate reporting in the region. And these seeds need to grow these coming years. And
Mhm.
some of them are really growing very good. And I always use Stephanie Lakshman as one of our examples. She was like a volunteer at a community organizations, and was like a TV reporter, and now she went to COP. She was invited based on a story she like produced with us at Climate Tracker by Canary for the Escazú agreement panel that happens every year one time. So she visited that event of the Escazú agreement, and now she's like very intensively working in the community space in Suriname, the indigenous community space.
Mhm.
Being their voice, but also writing about these stories about their problems, the solutions they're like uh introducing themselves in these communities. So that is like our big aim. These programs that we are running is just because we want more and more journalists to focus on climate change and climate reporting. Because let's be honest, when we open our phones, the first thing that you read on the news is politics. Nothing else than politics. And then climate change is something that's on the last page of the newspaper.
Yeah, it's kind
And
of
that's
buried.
what we are exactly. That's what we are trying to bring a change in. And the change needs to come from, you cannot expect the change to come from communities. No, it needs to come, from our mindset as journalists. You cannot only focus on sensation, because that's not journalism. Sensation is not journalism. Absolutely not. Sensation may sell more, may attract more readers, but deep inside, every journalist knows that sensation is not fulfilling the main goal of doing journalism. and that is like informing people, but also like bring the change. But yeah, that's that we should do like another episode on journalism, because journalism itself, I can talk a lot about journalism also in Suriname. It's like yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that is like something I
definitely.
have been like struggling for years with. But yeah, there are like, I know it's not easy for journalists also, because you're dependent on the editor, the media house or outlet you work for. They
Mhm.
decide, they are getting advertisement, and if that advertisement is, for example, uh, defaming their company, they would never highlight a story that is like linked to that company that is advertising at the media outlet. Those are like just facts out there. The government owned media outlets, they would never like bring out the so-called negative news.
Mhm.
So it's like, we also know there is never enough funds for journalists to be able to do
Funds.
research. One of the most big um challenges that we're having. So, with these programs that we are running, we are like giving journalists an opportunity to be as independent as they can be and as they want to be, but also that part of collaboration is very important to us, because the fellowships also have like one story that's called the collaboration story. So we like match them up. For example, a journalist from Suriname with a journalist from Jamaica or with a journalist from Guyana, and then they have to come together virtual and then work on a story that is like having, like, for example, Suriname is having the problem, Jamaica is having the solution. Let's learn
Mm.
from each other. So that way we're like trying to like support cross-border reporting, but also, this to create like a community of journalists. So it's not only that at Climate Tracker we have like a network of experts, no, but we also have a network of journalists. So whenever people want to work with journalists in the region. And believe me, there are organizations that reach out all the time to us. Do you have like a journalist in this country? Do you know someone in that country? And I'm very proud to say that we have already worked in almost all the Caribbean countries. And we have networks in all these countries, fellows in all these countries who are still reporting on climate change, who are still connecting with us, who are still, seeking for opportunities through us. So yeah, climate record is just here, as like this big, you have that point in the middle, and that everything else is going to all the countries, all the
Mm.
strings. We are like that combining aspect, that combining, bringing people together. That's what we are doing.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I guess the last question would be like, I guess since you're talking about the programs and stuff, you can tell people a little bit about, the opportunities they can look forward to. And so,
Yeah,
for
sure.
instance, for someone who doesn't know and would like to do something, but doesn't know what kind of opportunities you offer, you can kind of talk about those.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So to be able to answer that question, I first I'm going to tell you a very short. So Climate Tracker is like an international NGO that is working on with journalists to train them and like support them in climate reporting. And how do we do that? It could be sometimes it depends on our funders and yeah, our collaborations that we have. So we are like providing grants, or we are providing programs in the form of fellowships, and these fellowships have like certain requirements, certain deliverables. For example, we have the Caribbean Climate Justice Journalism Fellowship. That's a very, very, very famous fellowship that we are running. We are already now in the fourth cycle, and it's running till next year, February. So that is an ongoing fellowship that we're having. Currently, we're also doing the Energy Transition Fellowship that is focused on energy transition in the region in specific countries. It's a collaboration that we're having with one of our partners. And then the coming year, we have like, I can't say much yet, but we have like some new projects that we're going to launch. And we are like in that phase that Climate Tracker went through a transition itself. So the Caribbean region is functioning on its own, Asia on its own, and LATAM on its own, and I know we also started up in Africa on its own. So, but we are still connected to each other. So we are now, while we have just like wrapped up the transition and like finalizing some small administrative stuff, we are focusing on developing new programs this coming year. I'm pretty sure that we are hoping to do another cycle on climate justice too, but depends on the funding that we're going to have. But one thing I can tell you for sure, we are certainly going to have new programs. Just have to keep looking at our website, our social media channels, because we are very active on our even our website and our social media channels, very engaging too. So if you also, if there are organizations out there or fellows that want to like collaborate with Climate Tracker, or journalists that want to collaborate with Climate Tracker, just connect with us. And believe me, there is no such thing that we don't believe it. So if you even want to produce like a music video or a music that is talking about climate change to bring awareness, well, let's connect and let's see how we can get the funding. So there is no limit, just there are no like borders when it comes to your imagination, as long as it's like supports our goal, and that is like to bring the awareness to journalists, to Caribbean communities. So yeah, I would say yeah, those are the opportunities that we are currently running and that we're looking forward to. But next year, like the in January, February, we're going to have like more updates on what's coming. We are still working on like finalizing some of the projects that we want to launch.
All right, sounds good. So you heard it here first, fellas. We got lot of new stuff going. Lot of stuff to look forward to. But
Yeah,
also
that's true.
we have a lot of great stuff going on right now that we're working really hard to finish up. Um, so yeah, thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of the Caribbean Climate Calabash podcast. Thank you, Johannes, for joining us and sharing some more about what's going on. I'm sure our listeners and the fellows will appreciate it. Um, but yeah, thanks. And see you
Thank you
in the
so much,
next episode.
Gladstone, for having me. And I wish to, yeah, in the end, I would say, it's like end of the year in Suriname, we have like a saying in Dutch. It's like, Mofoyari. Mofoyari means it's like the end is nearing of this year. So be careful, it's going to be, I know we Korean people, we like to eat, drink. So don't
Yeah,
drink a lot, be
yeah,
responsible, and enjoy these holidays. And to our journalist colleagues, I say keep writing even when it's holidays.
yeah, exactly. All right, so see you guys in the next one. Take care.